Former President Donald Trump's New York criminal trial picks up again tomorrow after taking a week break. Closing arguments set to begin Tuesday. Jury expected to be handed the case on Wednesday, with deliberations then to follow. Legal panels here to weigh in. Ron Chapman is a federal defense attorney. And gentlemen, welcome and thanks for coming on. As we know, obviously, today's Memorial Day, and so our focus is on those service members who have passed. But it's also a time, as we know, when friends and family gather together over the holiday weekend, and that includes this non-sequestered jury in the Trump criminal trial. So, Ron, how much is this holiday weekend and break in the case going to play into their deliberations this week?
Listen, judges always tell juries not to look at outside information or press coverage or talk to people about the case. Attorneys are told we're supposed to presume that the jury will follow the judge's instructions unless we hear otherwise. I have been involved in a tremendous amount of cases where juries refused to follow that instruction and instead obtained outside information. Can't tell whether or not that has happened here, but there is an extreme risk that delaying closing arguments for such a long period of time would have permitted the jury to get outside information. That being said, may tilt towards Trump. A lot of the information that could be shared, the expert that the judge didn't allow to be called, that may be favorable to Trump and actually may tilt in his favor.
But not to mention Michael Cohen admitting to stealing from the Trump organization during his testimony. So, Ron, if you could present the prosecution's closing arguments, what would those look like?
Well, I think they're going to have to insulate themselves from the big Michael Cohen disaster. And here's how they typically do that in these types of cases. They'll say, we didn't choose Michael Cohen. Donald Trump did. Donald Trump chose Michael Cohen because he hired him to be his fixer. And everything that Michael Cohen did is the responsibility of Donald Trump. If you think he's a liar, if you think he's not truthful, that's because these types of offenses aren't made along with people who are angels. That's typically the closing argument. I think defense has to cut against that and say, listen, they didn't have to charge this crime. It's certainly well outside the statute of limitations. That can't be argued. But then I think they must go even further to show that if there really was a crime, it would have to hinge on something other than the testimony of Cohen and Stormy Daniels. And anybody who's seen these two people speak knows that they are in it for themselves and they are in it for their own publicity, and they're just not truthful people. That's reasonable doubt right there. That's enough for an acquittal.
And we talk so often about how important this role as jurors have when it comes to the fate of the former president of the United States, who's the presumptive nominee for the Republican ticket, based on which polls you look at, who could be returning to the White House. But Ron, you know, this isn't the only case that Donald Trump is facing. As we know, there are 3 other criminal cases here. We don't know exactly when the timeline of those will be. Is this New York case the only one that we could see before the election?
My guess is yes. I think that Judge Cannon down in Florida is likely to cause significant delays in that case, particularly because we're dealing with classified information and investigations. I was in the Marine Corps, dealt with a lot of classified prosecutions. These are not easy cases to handle because of the way the discovery is. And so that amount of time is certainly appropriate. January 6th, I think, will largely be disposed of by the Supreme Court. I think that the Supreme Court is likely to come down, allowing Donald Trump to have immunity for official acts. The case will be remanded to determine what is an official act, and it'll probably go back up to the Supreme Court after that decision is made. No chance of that. And of course, Fani Willis is getting wrapped up around herself out there in Georgia and really has no chance of getting this prosecution off the ground before the trial. And even if there is a trial date set before the trial, it seems like the Georgia Supreme Court is likely to take a shot at the composition of the prosecutor's office. So this will be the only trial, and it's looked pretty good for Donald Trump so far.
Okay. Really great analysis, gentlemen. Thanks so much for coming on today. We'll have to have you back later this week when there could be even more information. Eric and Ron, thank you.
Till next time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.